Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Craig Malkin. I'm a clinical psychologist and lecturer for Harvard Medical School. I'm also the author of Rethinking Narcissism, which is devoted to helping you understand and cope with narcissism in all your relationships, not just your romantic relationships, but across your life. I'm also the co-author of the New York Times bestseller, Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. In my chapter, I outline what dangerousness looks like through the lens of NPD. I don't diagnose. I just outline what to look for, and you can apply it to anybody you want. And politics, make up your own mind. What I wanted to talk about today is a follow-up to my last video, What is the Most Dangerous Thing About Covert Narcissism, in which I try to help help people understand that the way covert narcissism has been used more and more popularly is not aligned with, it's not consistent, it's not the same as the way mental health, most mental health providers, clinical psychologists, researchers use it. And specifically, covert narcissism is not being used the way it was defined by the people who originated the terms. The first person who spoke about it at length is someone named Wink, who actually I believe is local here in Massachusetts. He's still around. And what covert narcissism meant for them and how they defined it and how they researched it was this is somebody who, essentially all narcissists have a fragile self-esteem because they've often been abused or neglected. And their way of coping with that fragile self-esteem is one of two ways. Either they have sort of outward, loud, vain, bragging presentation, where they present bigger on the outside, but they feel smaller on the inside. And the reverse of that would be covert narcissism, where the grandiosity is hidden, where they don't present the grandiosity. Instead, secretly, they might feel like the most misunderstood person in the room, or even an undiscovered genius, but outwardly they're shy, or they're more fragile, they're more insecure. Now that doesn't mean that they're more emotional or emotionally expressive. If they were, then they wouldn't have the problems they did that present with people with, say, narcissistic personality disorder. When we reach the extreme, these are traits, and at the extreme they become narcissistic personality disorder. That's not what I wanted to talk about, though. What I wanted to talk about was that in the process of trying to make that distinction, it appears that I left much to my dismay, many people who find that idea helpful, feeling as though I was dismissing the idea of covert abuse, and I am absolutely not. So you want to think of covert abuse, I think that's what people mean by covert narcissism, where the person can be charming, maybe even seem generous to the outside world, but privately, especially over time, or maybe not even over time, maybe sort of very quickly as you get to know this person, they put you down, they leave you feeling like you're nothing, which is really a projection of what they're feeling on the inside. They diminish you in order to get on top of their feeling of being diminished. They can be very cunning and careful about the way they go about this so that it's not obvious to others. That is covert abuse. At the extreme, of course, these are people who present as wonderful people in the community and then go home and hurt, physically abuse the people in their lives. That kind of behavior is most closely associated with a cluster of traits known now as the Dark Triad, Tetrad, excuse me. That's what I was going to say. Is like, originally we had this idea of the Dark Triad, now there's a Dark Tetrad. And the Dark Tetrad includes sadism, which is intentionally hurting others because it gives us pleasure. That is a trait. Psychopathy, which is a pattern of remorseless lies and manipulation. You can see all of these are exploitative, doing whatever it takes, no matter what the cost to other people. narcissism, which is an intense drive to feel special no matter what the cost to others. And finally, Machiavellianism. I didn't stumbled over that. Machiavellianism, which comes from the figure in history. If you look it up, you'll see Machiavelli wrote The Prince, and he talked about these principles for how leaders, in particular royalty, I think, can fool people to get what they want, play a kind of chess game. Each of these has an exploitative quality on all their own, but as you can hear, Machiavellianism, that trait of the Dark Tetrad, is really all about planning. It is really all about making sure that people don't know what you're up to. And if you're trying to hurt someone, or you're intent on causing them harm without others knowing, right? If you're strong in Machiavellianism, you're going to be particularly adept at this. So I think what people are describing, if you want to think about those four traits, those tend to drive more covert forms of abuse. And in particular, Machiavellianism, because it really is a trait that's all about being cunning, being careful, being planful, extremely insidious. That's what this trait captures. So I think what people are describing when in the popular conversation, when they're talking about covert narcissism, is they're talking about dark tetrad narcissists with narcissistic personality disorder. That is somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder who isn't simply blocked in empathy, but they might have psychopathic traits where they don't experience empathy, and they can barely manage what's called cognitive empathy, which is they can act as though they know the right things to say. Machiavellianism, very much the same thing, and in a couple of studies, Machiavellianism is linked directly, and this is the point, to what is called indirect aggression. What is indirect aggression? Indirect aggression is where it's not obvious to others, where it's more relational, the subtle put-downs, the undermining, things that leave you feeling, again, like you're diminished on the inside, because the attempt of the Dark Tetrad person with narcissistic personality disorder to try to get rid of those feelings by doing what I call playing emotional hot potato with them. I don't want to feel this way. Here, you take it. So if you want to recognize the type of person who tends to engage in covert abuse, you really want to think about those Dark Tetrad traits, and especially Machiavellianism, because that is explicitly defined as that more planful, intentional, insidious, thoughtful approach. And if you combine that with sadism, now we're getting into that area. And I think that's what people were talking about, that form of abuse. But in the research, at least, covert narcissism, where the person simply has more hidden grandiosity, doesn't imply that that person, it shows more of those dark tetrad traits than, say, somebody who has overt narcissism. And in fact, both kinds of narcissism, covert and overt, they can both take the form of these dark tetrad patterns. So I hope that's helpful and clarifying, and I hope that especially that helps validate this very important truth that people have experienced covert abuse, and clarifies how clinical psychologists and researchers have identified those patterns and what they've linked it to. So again, thank you again for all of your support on my channel and all of the comments that you leave. If you like this video, Please leave a thumbs up, leave comments. I often follow up like I am in this video to help clarify further or respond to people's questions and comments, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.